And the EFF has accused the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape of sabotaging its delay-hit protests over the impounding of taxis. Drivers affiliated to the South African National Taxi Council embarked on an 8-day strike over the issue in August, which left thousands of commuters stranded. Cape Town Safety and Security MMC JP Smith joins us now for more on that. MMC, good evening. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, sir.
So, accused of sabotage, tell us what are the issues here around the Jakes Galville Drive standoff, around the stopping of protesters from leaving the field opposite the Vangate Mall?
No, look, I think that the reality is that we can't be accused of causing a traffic accident. We had a massive traffic accident opposite on the N2. Near that turnoff. That was a matter of public record, and I hardly think that it is reasonable to try and blame the poor turnout of a protest march on the city. Rather own up and say that you struggle to mobilize supporters to come to this, and that many of the other entities you perhaps relied on to swell your numbers withdrew from the march, including the ANC and other political parties and other civil society entities that decided not to participate in the end.
Was it an agreed upon condition that, for example, vehicles will not be part of the protest? Because it seems around the Vangate Mall issue, it was a standoff between the protesters and the police around allowing taxis to be part of the march.
You know, we have so many protests in the city. It must say something for the fact that it is only ever the EFF's protests that end up with, in quotes, standoffs. So many, because Parliament is in Cape Town, it is the site of many protest actions, and the South African police and the city's enforcement resources are well adept at dealing with this. It's only ever the EFF where these in-quotes standoffs and confusion and disagreement happens. The condition of excluding minibus taxis or any other vehicles from the protest, from the march, was clearly stipulated and agreed to and signed by them. And when you then seek to renegotiate conditions attached to a permit on the fly is when the problem happens. Equally so when you arrive an hour and a half late for a memorandum handover and keep the MMC for urban mobility waiting for you for close on 2 hours.
So there was no intimidation then, MMC, you're saying, because they're saying they were being intimidated, or these were intimidation tactics by the Democratic Alliance?
No, sir. I don't think anybody realistically believes the DA capable of any meaningful intimidation. What intimidation we do see, however, and which we took a dim view of, and which today had an unnecessary impact, is the scare tactics that go along with the content generated by not just the official EFF media inviting people to the march, but the ancillary stuff that is all released into the public domain that drives fear and anxiety, and purposefully so, because this is how this party seeks to be relevant. And that then causes the police and the city's resources to be tied up for an entire day from very early this morning, anticipating the worst behavior based on the previous track record of the EFF in terms of public violence, and which tied up resources. So when a violent shooting incident broke out in Manenberg this afternoon, our resources were not immediately available to deploy as they should have. And even as the march was proceeding, we were withdrawing resources from the march to try and attend with some delay, a needless delay, to the shooting incident in Manenberg. We were luckily able to make an arrest and confiscate a firearm, but we may have been able to do more if it weren't for tying up resources with this kind of political theatre.
Any other major disruptions reported by the Joint Command Centre?
No, sir. The proceedings went reasonably well. The crowd was fairly small, and the memorandum was handed over. There was substantial speeches made in the handover of the memorandum. When the city's MMC attempted to reply, he was silenced. So perhaps it wasn't about getting to the facts. What is frustrating is, unfortunately, that the EFF is behind the curve on this, because there are direct negotiations between Santaco and the city and the provincial government. Yeah. Those negotiations are far advanced, and we are discussing new issues. Unfortunately, the stuff the EFF is raising in their memorandum is dated and is trying to take us back to stuff we stopped talking about weeks ago. And that's the issue of when you play politics with important issues where you shouldn't be involved and where you don't understand the issues, and where you're trying to insert narratives. And so very little was achieved today because, in fact, some of the issues raised in the memorandum are, in fact, moot, and we have moved on, hence the Santaco officially not participating in the march.
So the question of the 43 taxis recently impounded, 36 being sedan, Mapela, that's what they call them, local taxis, and 7 minibuses. You're saying that matter is moot and has been addressed already?
So we impound vehicles every day, as does every other province in this city, in this country. So we impound more than those every single day. And in terms of the core agreement with Santaco, remember there were several things which we agreed we would continue to impound for. Now, when you cause 1,000 or 5,000 offences a day, and we're only acting on a handful, 30, 40, 50, when you then say, well, limit your impoundments to only this 30%, there's still 300 impoundments or offences to impound for. We're still only impounding 30, 40, 50 a day. There is a bottomless amount of transgressions being caused by an industry that is very bad at self-regulating and very bad at taking liability for its business. And this is the nature of the whole debate. The EFF is on the wrong side of this debate, as it often and always is, because here, quite frankly, we should be looking at the commuters and the kind of service delivery we offer to commuters. And far be it from intimidating the taxi industry or the EFF march, we should look at what has happened to other forms of public transport that compete with this industry, where we have seen the systematic looting and destruction of rail infrastructure, the constant targeting of buses and My City buses especially, and Golden Arrow buses to reduce the competition. And what we're increasingly left with is a growing monopoly and a lack of options for commuters, which of course serves only one group of participants in this debate.
So are you saying as you're saying that behind the curve, you're past the point of the three things that you and I spoke about the last time that they were arguing about, saying, well, constitutionally you're allowed to impound for lack of driver's license, lack of operating permit, I forget the third one, because they are still demanding that you only impound vehicles for that and not for doing a U-turn on a one-way traffic or something of that nature, but give them a fine if that's what they've done.
So we offered them an alternative. We offered the alternative of saying that we would not impound any of their vehicles as long as they pay their traffic fines, because they say all they want is for the drivers to be held accountable for the behavior. So we put it to Santaco that we would only impound the vehicles if the fines are unpaid. In other words, if the driver is not amending his behavior and the owner is not helping us hold the driver accountable for the danger he is causing the commuters in his vehicle or her vehicle and to other road users. And this was not accepted this past week by Santaco, so I think an opportunity lost to move forward, but that is their prerogative. So we're still talking about only the existing mechanisms in terms of the National Land Transportation Act. I put it to you that we are constitutionally entitled to right operating licensing conditions that extend the impoundment regime as per the National Land Transport Act to all of those other traffic offences, and that it is fit and proper to do so, and that it is in the public interest to do so. Because we as the state must do everything possible to achieve compliance with the law. There is no reason to try and exempt one group of road users from good driving practice, especially when they hold the lives of hundreds or thousands of people in their care. So every journalist, every member of parliament, every councillor, every member of the public and every commuter should be fighting and advocating for the maximum enforcement to be done, because if you complied with the law, there would be zero impoundments. It's a very easy consequence or penalty to avoid.
MMC, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. That's the Mayoral Committee member for Safety and Security there, J.P. Smith.